Hello, welcome back to Models by me. This time part 4 of the 110 build, which will be the painting section. As you saw, I'm using Ammo MIG's RLM78 for the underside. As alluded to in part 3, I tried to use the airbrush initially for like pre-shading, but it just wouldn't work with me at the moment. So basically undercoated the entire plane in Citadel base paint Corax White before proceeding with doing the first coat of what ended up being about 2 or 3 layers of the RLM78. It was quite a thin paint, so it needed a few layers just to get consistency, and even then I still had to go over it in a few spots and apply 2 or 3 more layers on top of that. Now with the underside done, time to do the top side of the 110, this time in our Ammo MIG's RLM79. This was applied in 2 layers again. Didn't actually need a 3rd layer, only little spots here and there, but this one went on a lot better than the previous colour did. While we're doing the painting, let's get the canopy section done. So first off, I am using Ammo MIG's RLM02, the interior colour. This is to represent actually looking at the inside of the frame. Using a thin brush just so I try and keep on top of the panel lines, so any bits I did go onto the actual glass, then I would just scratch off with a bit of plastic sprue. Just like the rest of the colours, I applied this in 2 layers, because specifically on the clear plastic, it is very easy to see all the bits of paint that, well, the spots where you've missed. So just applying the second coat first, make sure it's nice and solid, and you ain't going to see the sand on top of it. Here's Citadel's Corax White. I'll be using this on all the places where it should be marked out in yellow, but I'm using it white as the base colour so I get a nice consistent yellow colour later. As you can see, all the parts that I went over the top with either the sand or the blue underneath, or on the tail here. Just so, again, it just gives that nice consistent base layer. So the counterweight tabs in the middle there, I don't think I should have painted those up in hindsight, but oh well. Now for ammo makers again, RLM04. This is the yellow paint, so it'll just be going over all the parts which I just base painted in Corax White. This went on very, very well. I don't even think I need to put a second layer on. This just went straight on nicely the first time. Out comes the Corax White again. This time it's for the white band on the rear part of the fuselage here. Luckily the first half of the band was easy to do because you just follow the panel line all the way around. Second half is a bit harder because you've got to go more in the middle of 2 panel lines if you're following the instructions and not the box art. But once I had the outlines done, I just filled in the gap in the middle. Again, this is just so I have a nice consistent colour for not that one. This is RLM80. This is for all the mottling on the top. So I very carefully, I put the plane on top of the instructions and I'm very carefully with a thin brush and quite watered down paint, just marking out the edges and then filling in the mottling afterwards. This bit took a while, and just to emphasise how careful I'm being, this footage and the previous footage of putting the base paints on is all shown at the exact same speed. So yeah, this bit took a while. Here I've put the plane up on paint pots again, as you can see, and just so I can do the port side of the fuselage. And I wish model makers stopped doing this, where they show you the camouflage but they don't show you the part hidden by the wings and engine. So this bit in the middle here I've pretty much kind of made up. Nope, I'm not missing any part of the instructions here. There is no paint guide for the starboard side of the plane here. So I'm just making all this up using similar patterns to what was already put onto the plane. Out comes the Humbro paint again. It's 241. Probably guess what this is. Yep, it's to finish off these propellers. You see what I mean? I can hold at least one propeller here and just paint up the other two fully. Also around the edges. Now onto white scar. This is for the white band and the white tip of the tail. You got to water your paints down, but for white I've been advised do not use water. And specifically for the white scar, the Citadel colour, use Lamy medium. It's the acrylic mixture, so you can just add a bit more into the colour and the equivalent of watering it down without diluting the paint. While I wait for the white to dry, I might as well do this last propeller while that paint's dry. Now time for Humbro 53, the gunmetal colour. First off, I'm using this on the caps of the propellers, as well as the forward machine guns here that are sticking out. And I'll also use this on all the exhaust stacks as well. Just sticking out the sides. Just trying to make sure with the brush I can get it in between all the stacks so everything is painted up and they haven't got clear plastic showing in the middle. Time for Mithril Silver again. This is for the light. You can just see on the port wing there. There is no clear plastic for this, but it is definitely there, so I just painted it in and just leave it as that. Non-oil, it'll be going over all the metallic parts that we just painted up as they are now dry. I did try to make sure there was a bit more of the non-oil towards the exits of the exhaust, just to represent a bit more the heat damage and the staining that would happen. And just to emphasise it a bit more, Agrax Earthshade. Again, I'm just putting this on pretty much the very ends of all the exhaust stacks. Again, just to represent a bit more the burnt metal colour you get from the exhausts. Here comes Humbro 241 again. Yep. This is for the bombs, as you can see here. I did water this paint down a little bit too far, but it did give a much smoother finish. Now with all the paint done on the main fuselage, time to do the decals. Quite a few of the small ones as well as all these big ones. So I just used hot water and a paintbrush and paper towel, wiping off the excess and then trying to get it into place. I always tend to do either the top or the lower wings first, and this one I clearly did the top wings first and then doing the lower wings. All these decals, including these little ones you saw earlier, they went on with no hassle whatsoever. Only like 20-30 seconds in hot water and just straight onto the fuselage. No problems whatsoever with these ones, they're quite nice ones. Now time for Lamy and medium. So what I like to do when I do my decals is put the big ones on first, and then use Lamy and medium just to go over the top and just seal in these decals so they won't end up getting moved or come off with my finger as I'm trying to move the plane around to do all these little decals in a minute. With all the decals done, time to just touch up some of these spots around the edges, mostly just where I missed off painting them earlier. So around the cockpit as well as the undercarriage. Now time to glue that machine gun in place. What I made right at the very beginning, and it's one of the last things to be glued in. So just add a bit of glue into the hole and then I'll just put the machine gun straight in. Now time for some weathering. So I'm using Revell's deep black powder here. So I'm using one of the Revell brushes, the double-ended ones. One side to put the powder onto the fuselage, or onto the wings, get it into all the creases and then get it all into the panel lines. And then the other end I wipe off all the excess. That's why I quite like this double-ended one. So it saves me having to swap between two brushes and potentially getting them mixed up. Now I can just use the one brush, I know the blue end to get the powder out and the red end to wipe off the excess. and to kind of like smudge up a little bit. I'm just using a bit of water just to wipe away some of the excess powder, just to try and tidy up some of the lines a bit. weathering done, time to glue on all the extra parts on the bottom, the bombs and the fuel tanks. So here I'm just using a little bit of the white powder, just to add a bit of a contrast to the smoke stains down the side. As when you look at real planes, they're not just a solid dark stain, there is like splotches of white or even brown. And I'm also using the white on the rest of the plane, just to give that little subtle difference. Some spots it worked, other spots it didn't work that well. Like some of the raised ribs you can see on the control surfaces. It worked well there, some of the other parts. Final assembly. Let's get the canopy glued on at long last. So cutting all the pieces out, making sure, because I wanted the canopy open, to have the glass on the right orientation to the plane, and I glued it on with a bit of PVA. So I poured out some PVA, used the bottom end of a paintbrush, as you can see, just to put it onto the canopy there. Here's Ravel's Sand Yellow, which I'll be using onto the canopy that we just put on, just to represent some of the sand getting stuck to the actual glass. Also applied some of the weathering powder onto the tyres as well as some of the other spots on the plane. Just again, just to represent the sand getting stuck to various parts of this plane. Time for the peat-hole tube and the aerial. The peat-hole tube, I drilled out the hole a little bit just to make sure that any paint that did get in there was removed, as well as to make it a little bit bigger, as the peat-hole tube didn't actually fit in that well initially. And then I had the exact same problem with the aerial at the top here. I had to drill out the hole again, as well as file away some of the aerial as well, where it would connect to the canopy, just to get it to slot in. That was not a great fit, that one. It eventually did decide to stay there. And then finally, just a little bit of touching up here and there, just where I've missed painting up some of the edges, or where I just cut the canopy off. And here it is, the final completed model. This was actually a really lovely kit to put together. A few small issues like the engines, and as you can tell with the fuel tanks, they're definitely not correct. But generally I'm quite happy how it's turned out. The weathering doesn't look too bad in my opinion. I could have done a bit more weathering around the nose here. It looks, you look at the rest of the plane, it's grubby as anything, and then you look at the nose and it's like pristine and clean. So it's like, probably could have done a bit more work there. The raised panel lines helped a little bit, but I actually struggled to see them through the paint, to be honest. I'm trying to put all the weathering powders on, but no, generally the rest of the kit went together lovely. It's a standout on the shelf. At the moment I've only got, this is my second 110, and the other one is the Airfix kit, so it's got the closed cockpit. So this one's going to stand out because, well, partly because the cockpit's open. But overall, quite happy how this came out. Definitely learnt a few lessons what to do, watch out for next time. And yeah, would recommend this and for anybody really. So if you like the video, please hit that like button. Comment below anything you would have done differently, or any planes you would like to see me try and make next. I'll subscribe to keep track of any new videos I release, which I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, bye.